Okay, so we're going to be using 3 bundles of I Am Hair Collections: deep wave, a deep wave closure, a ventilated cap, thread, a curved needle, stick pins, a mannequin tripod, or whatever kind of tripod you have for your mannequin head. So right here, we're just checking to make sure that the cap does fit on the mannequin head at the appropriate size, because sometimes when you order the caps, they may not fit. So you need to put the cap on and check it and make sure it fits the correct size head. You don't want your customer with a cap too big or too small. You want it to be just right. Okay, so now we're gonna place I'm sorry. Now we're gonna place the closure on the cap. You're gonna try. You're gonna pin it at one end. Try to get the closure as correct in the middle as you can. You're gonna start pinning one end, and you're gonna try to stretch the other side to the other side, and you're gonna pin it. And this is what's gonna make your closure lie flush up against your in front of your scalp. You may notice when you pin down one side that the other side needs to come over, so just unpin it and stretch it. The lace will stretch. It may be a little process. You might have to pin it about 4 times, but that's okay. Try to get it as straight and close in the middle. Try to kind of line it up with the line of your mannequin head if you could get it on there correctly and equal. Try to line it up that way because you don't want your customer with a crooked part. Child, that would not be pretty. Oh, another thing, I wouldn't say half an inch. I always line my closure up a little less than half an inch in front of the cap hairline, because you know you're gonna have to pull it down like you see me pinning it to the back now. You know you're gonna have to pin it down at the back, and when you pin it out at the back, it's gonna pull it back some. So you might want to give it that little bit of distance at the front so it'll still be equal at the front of your head. And just make sure you pin the back down. Make sure when you pin the back down on your sides, you don't have any gaps. Checking both sides and make sure you don't have any gaps. We'll ensure that your closure is going to lay flat on the wig. As you see now, I'm having to stretch and pin down the back of my closure again because I had a little gap in it. You don't want any gaps. Okay, y'all see how flat that is? No gaps. I know they like, girl, you said you ain't had no gaps, but you pinned it again. I'm sorry, y'all. Must have found a gap in there. Checking the front, make sure I still got my little extra distance at the front. Moving my pen again. Keep your hair out the way. That way you can make sure the closure is lying down flat. Okay, so now we're about to sew down the closure, because before you sew it on your sewing machine, you want your closure to stay in place. So you're going to use the thread and you're going to sew it down. I usually I always start sewing down my closure with the on the right side. As a matter of fact, when I use the sewing machine, I always start on my right side also. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because like I said, you're gonna come back and reassure reassure it with the sewing machine. So it doesn't have to be a pretty stitch, as long as you can get it sewed down on the cap. So when I go through the first time, I take it back through the thread to make sure it's tying a slight knot. That way I know it won't be coming loose. That's the worst thing. You think you got your knot at the beginning of the thread, and then you start sewing, you get to the end, and you pull the thread, and the thread just coming loose. But that's the worst. Ooh, child, that's the worst thing. Try to get y'all a little closer. I'm gonna speed this up because like I said, it's just a simple stitch. I done got a knot. Lord Jesus, help me. Really, really. Just won't let me be great today. Just won't let me be great. That's all that is. Y'all know what I did? I got that thread knot as low as I could, and I just tightened over it. Keep it moving. Wasn't finna hold me up. Got too much time to move. But like I said, we're gonna come back with the sewing machine and sew it down. Let's go ahead and try to fast forward this a little bit. Okay. So now it's time to go ahead and sew it on the sewing machine. So what you're going to do, you're going to get your plastic as flat as you can. Drop it. Then you're going to drop your needle. And you're going to begin to sew, keeping your hair out of the way, making sure nothing is underneath your cap. You're only basically sewing on the closure, the area that you threaded earlier. Try your best to keep as much hair as you can and plastic out of your way. You'll also notice that when I'm sewing, I'm not pushing, I'm not pulling. I'm basically just directing my machine. I'm letting the machine do all the work for me. Don't push or pull because you will create gaps. When I get towards the end of sewing my closure on with the sewing machine, you will see me go back and forth, reversing so that I'm securing that thread so that it won't come loose. So now we're just going to cut off the lace that's underneath the closure. The part we just sewed the closure onto the cap with the sewing machine. So now we're just going to cut off the lacing that's underneath the closure that's loose, that's not sewed. Basically, you have a left side and a right side that you sewed. You're going to sew what's in the middle in the shape of a U. And take your time with this because you don't want to cut your closure. You don't want to cut your thread because if you do, you may have to start the process all over again, and nobody wants to do that. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to check and put the cap back on the mannequin, make sure everything is okay. And we're going to sew from ear to ear. Where I'm pointing right there, that's the ear marker. That imitates where your ear is. So we're going to sew in the direction from ear to ear. This method allows me my extensions to show less. So like I said earlier, when beginning and starting my closure, I try to always make sure I let it go forward and reverse, forward and reverse. This locks on the track better. And when sewing this, I'm trying to keep my plastic flat. I'm not pushing or pulling because like I said earlier, it can cause gaps and bumps in your wig and you don't want that. And I'm just laying my plastic flat and laying my track flat on top of it and letting the sewing machine sew. If you're unable to go in that basically U that I showed you for the beginning track, you can draw a line that way to keep your direction correct and allow your track not to be crooked and keep it in the correct form of the U. Now, as you can see right here, I've put my cap back on my mannequin head because every time I sew on a track, I always make sure it's not bumpy. And right here, I'm drawing my directional lines. Some people like to sew directly onto the line. I just use them as directional lines, but if you want to sew directly onto the line, feel free. You're basically just going at the back, you're going straight across. Once you get to the part where the ear to ear section is, you're shaping it until in the shape of the letter U. So now we're going to sew down the first track, and like I said earlier, you want to just make sure you're laying the track flat, nothing's underneath the plastic, you're keeping your plastic flat, and you're not pushing or pulling. You're letting the sewing machine sew. You're just keeping everything flat and showing it the direction you want it to sew. And this is how it looks as you get closer to the top. Okay, so now I'm on my last track. I'm at the track that I wouldn't say connects to the closure. It's more so like it's kissing the closure. You want to meet this track right at the edge of the closure. And you're just going to follow that U shape around the closure. Okay, and this is how it's going to look underneath the cap before you take the plastic off. Okay, now we're going to take out the plastic. As you can see, the white lines that are vertical running up and down the back of the cap, those are what keeps the plastic connected on. So we're just going to use our tweezers and we're going to pull the white string out, and that's going to help our plastic loosen up. Okay, and right here is our finished product.